Part of the American genius has been bridging divides, both physical and social. It says so right there on the seal of the president. E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
We stand behind you, President Trump. Do not stand down. The Patriots will fight right behind you.
America seemed a long way from that ideal today outside the Pennsylvania state capitol this afternoon.
This your family?
This is Congressman Jim Jordan. He was handpicked by President Trump to lead his defense against impeachment. Today, he's protesting the way the vote is being counted.
How does the country come together after all of this? I mean, is that in your mind going forward? Whatever happens?
I certainly hope the country can come together. But I will tell you what, I mean, for 4 years, we've had Democrats do nothing but attack President Trump.
When the president says there's been widespread fraud, you know, he said on election night that this is
well, how do you explain the fact that 23 ballots show up? 23,000 ballots show up, and Shazam, they're all for Biden? How does that happen? That's statistically impossible. It can't
Things happen, don't they? Things happen. You know.
Oh, you think 23 ballots, one whole batch of ballots shows up, and there's not one single vote for President Trump in that batch?
But one of the lawsuits is about 53.
Do you think that can happen?
I don't know what happens, but one of the lawsuits is about 53 votes, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I want every legitimate ballot counted. I think every single American wants every legitimate ballot counted. What we don't want is illegitimate, illegal votes, illegal ballots counted, because that undermines the integrity of our election system, plain and simple.
Of course, most people in Pennsylvania today are just quietly getting on with their lives. In the City Line diner, the news is on, but nobody is really watching.
If it looks like Joe Biden might win, do you think that is a step in the right direction for a more unified country?
No, but I don't know what is a step toward a more unified country. I honestly don't. I don't see this country coming together. I don't know. Maybe it will.
It may help. I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of Biden, and I'm definitely not a fan of Trump, but, you know, we know where Trump's at with it because he's an idiot. He's just honest about it, but I don't know really Biden's intentions.
Gary and Jackie Hutterman embody this divided state, this divided nation.
You voted for Biden?
Yeah, I did.
And you voted for?
Trump. Divided household.
You could be the lesson for America. What's the secret? Just don't talk about it.
We don't, because we know when it's something that we're going to disagree on. We both have the right to our own opinion, so we don't argue over it, because there's no point to it.
Getting upset with each other is not going to change anything.
And then, do you have to argue about the bill, or who's going to pay? Or?
No, he'll hand it to me.
But I'll give her my credit card.
There was little laughter to be had today in the city of brotherly love. Two opposing protests faced off in Philadelphia at the facility where the biggest tranche of Pennsylvania votes is being counted. And in the middle of it all, two Trump campaign officials arrived demanding to be allowed to witness the count.
What is going on in this city? What are you hiding? Open up the doors, let us in, let us 6 feet away so that we can have a free and fair election. Whether you voted for Donald Trump or you voted for Joe Biden, everybody has a right to witness what's transpiring here. This makes it look like a kangaroo court. We deserve better, and we're not leaving until we witness every single vote that transpires in here.
But if President Trump does lose, Democrats say he needs to accept defeat swiftly for the good of the country.
Well, I think both sides have a part to play. The winner needs to reach out to the side that lost, but the losing candidate needs to accept that they lost as well. And they need to congratulate the winner. And I think that whoever loses need to tell their followers or their voters that it's over and that we need to unite as a country.
We are a country that has suffered serious divisions before, and over time we will heal. You know, the legitimacy of George Bush is not questioned much today. And some 20 years hence, the legitimacy of Amy Coney Barrett and perhaps this election, whether it ultimately falls to Mr. Trump or it falls to Mr. Biden, will be part of history, and we will have other reasons for division moving forward.
Is that a hopeful message? That someday America will find something else to fight about? Right now, no one is reaching out to the other side.
David Grossman reporting there from Pennsylvania. In the last few seconds, we've just heard that Donald Trump will be making a press conference statement, 11:30 p.m. UK time. He's very kindly waiting till we're off air so you can catch it then. In a moment, we'll speak to Donald Trump's former Director of Communications, Bryan Lanza. But we're going to start with another key swing state that's been very much in the spotlight, Michigan, and their Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, joins us now. Secretary of State, just tell us where things stand in Michigan, because it was projected yesterday for Joe Biden. President Trump claimed Michigan in his column and has tried to fight a lawsuit there. Where are things now?
The unofficial tabulation is complete in Michigan, so the numbers that have been reported are pretty much a reflection of every ballot being tabulated. Now begins the process of overseeing and reviewing every protocol, certifying the election, and over the next 10 days, making the results official.
So Donald Trump has lost his fight there to stop the counting, but you've heard Michigan Republican senators saying there's all kinds of chicanery, there's deceptive ballots. Can your voters be confident that there are no irregularities in the system?
Very much so. Here in Michigan, we've got several secure protocols in place to confirm that only valid ballots are counted and that every valid ballot will be counted. And so we have experienced lawsuits throughout this election cycle. Primarily, most of them are politically motivated as opposed to based on legally meritorious claims. That's certainly what we've seen out of recent lawsuits in the past few days or so after the polls closed, trying to stop the count. Those have by and large have been dismissed and found to be without merit. And really, I think at the end of the day, everyone can be confident that our process in Michigan is secure, it's been transparent, and that our results are accurate.
Wouldn't it be more transparent if bipartisan teams were allowed in? That's been the concern of Donald Trump, that his poll watchers were not allowed in. You just saw Corey Lewandowski in Pennsylvania next door asking for access there. Isn't it better to have that bipartisan transparency and the monitors inside?
Absolutely. That's how we actually have run things here in Michigan, and I suspect in other states as well. In Michigan, we actually have bipartisan election workers overseeing the count of absentee ballots and as serving as poll workers. Once those requirements are met, we also allow observers and challengers to observe the process. And notably, we had observers and challengers in Detroit, as well as many other parts of the state, not just to observe the count, but through the election as well, to observe the voting process itself. And notably, everything went very smoothly. Everyone was very respectful of the process. Everyone observed the process. No one became disruptive, really until the end, when things got to get close and national media started talking about who won Michigan or who lost Michigan. And then we started to see people arrive outside the facility where counting was finishing up in Detroit and begin to, have some disruption. But notably, the work inside, which again was overseen by bipartisan teams and very transparent, was continued and went forward without problem. And now we have the official, the unofficial tabulation more or less complete.
Some of our viewers will have seen those scenes in Detroit outside the polling stations that you were talking about. Are you confident that your staff are safe, that the polling can continue when you have that kind of disruption?
Yeah, I mean, look, if people came to Detroit thinking they could intimidate the workers inside that building away from doing their job, they don't know Detroit. I mean, clearly, our workers and the observers and everyone involved in the process stayed focused on the work, the important duty they had for democracy, and completed the count. And I don't often comment on other states' operations, but it's also noteworthy that in Philadelphia, where the clip you were just showing is happening, they've actually had live video, live streaming the process in Philadelphia, the vote counting process. So transparency has not just been related to Michigan, it's been all across the country in many ways. And that really underscores the health of our democracy.
On a wider note, would you accept that Joe Biden cannot begin to claim victory whilst all this is going on, whilst the lawsuits are going on, and whilst you're still seeing these attempts to ask the questions?
Well, one, I think it's important to differentiate between lawsuits without merit that are really designed to further a narrative, a public narrative, or perhaps political agenda, wrongly sowing seeds of doubt about the integrity of our elections process. That's what we've seen here in Michigan. I imagine that's a lot of what's happening right now, as opposed to meritorious lawsuits that, by all means should play themselves out. So what we're seeing is more so, an effort to, misinform the public about the sanctity of our elections and the integrity of our elections, which is very much secure in our state and throughout the country. And so I think we continue counting every vote, and the candidates, as they by and large most have done, should react to what the voters say as reflected by the counts of the votes coming out of various states.
Jocelyn Benson, thanks very much indeed. Let's go to Bryan Lanza, who's been with the Trump campaign for, 6 years or so. Where's the GOP right now? That's the question that Rudy Giuliani, Eric Trump are asking. Our voters will never forget. You haven't got the party with you anymore, have you?
I think we just saw Nikki Haley tweet saying where she stood with this issue. Listen, I think the GOP is sometimes they get complacent, but Don Jr. remind them of the only reason they have the majority in the U.S. Senate, the only reason they have these majorities in the state legislature was because President Trump campaigned the country. You
say complacent. I wonder, Bryan, whether it's not that, whether they are trying to distance themselves now from somebody who looks to them like a loser.
That statement would only be accurate if you hadn't seen people respond to Don Jr.'s tweet. So they've responded to Don Jr.'s tweets. You've had other politicians in the GOP, leadership in the GOP, come out and say something. So I say they're complacent because they've sort of now picked up the pace.
Nikki Haley responded to the tweet by saying the law must be followed. Yes. Definitely open to interpretation. You've had Chris Christie, Michael Steele, John Kasich, former governors here, Ben Shapiro, prominent Republicans who were horrified by that speech from Donald Trump early yesterday morning.
It was difficult to watch. I mean, I was horrified too. I mean, the vote needs to be counted. Every vote, every legally casted vote.
Difficult to watch him saying, frankly, we've won.
Absolutely. What he said about, claiming victory. It's, listen, I've worked in politics for 20 years. We take the sanctity of vote very, very respectfully, and it means something to us. So, listen, sometimes the president does stuff that puts us in an uncomfortable position. Sometimes he puts us in a position where we can be quite proud of him.
But
Those are one of those uncomfortable positions.
An uncomfortable position, Bryan. I mean, honestly speaking, when you've got a president with a scattergun approach, just throwing out lawsuits wherever he can find something that he doesn't like, it has no consistency. You've had James Baker, who was the sort of Republican hero of 2000 Florida, saying this is totally different. He's got nothing to stand on.
Listen, the President Trump's style has been different, and that's what's gotten him here. If he would have followed the established political rules, he probably wouldn't be president today. So he's going to stick to his instinct.
Political rules, it's the law, isn't it? It's electoral law. It's democracy in America. That has to mean something to you and your country.
Absolutely, it does, and that's why we ask that every legally casted vote be counted. The rules can't change in the middle of a game. They can't change midstream, and that's what you're having in Pennsylvania. At least that's what the president feels is going on in Pennsylvania. And he's allowed to push those regresses forward. If he's a victim here and he's an injured party, he's allowed to say they're not allowed to change the rules midstream. It seems like a very simple concept here, but the Democrats in some of these electoral boards, they like to put their thumb on the scale. It's not the first time we should be surprised by that.
But it is interesting that you're saying if he's a victim. I wonder if there isn't somebody, you or somebody in the Trump clan, who has to take him aside and say, this isn't working. You have to be honourable here. You have to accept, for the sake of democracy and patriotism in your country, this isn't working. It's not a good look. I mean, is anyone going to do that?
I think what we say to him is, sir, we have to, count every legally casted vote, and then we'll see where we are at the end of it. Some of these lawsuits here set the predicates, like you said, their narrative to sort of test out where they can land and what they can do. But the ultimate strategy, from the administration, from the campaign, is to make sure that every legally casted vote is counted. It seems like a simple process on our part. There are people who want to get in the middle of it.
Every legally cast vote that is just in the states where he hasn't won. I mean, you're not looking at legally cast votes in Texas or Iowa or Florida, are you?
It's not close enough for it to matter. We're looking at places because of our electoral college where it matters.
When you look back is
we wouldn't pay attention to a race in North Dakota if it was a 50,000 vote spread, because North Dakota is not relevant to a presidential campaign,
but you have to
like Florida and Arizona.
But there is a pattern here, which is all the places where he thinks he sees fraud, Pennsylvania or Michigan or Nevada or Arizona, they're all places that he hasn't won. Now, I know that sounds really obvious, but it doesn't hang together. It doesn't look that credible, does it? Where you only see fraud in places you've lost.
I mean, those are the only
or
places,
might have lost.
Those are the only places left to be counted, by the way. I mean, so that's why you have the focus. That's why it's important. That's why it's important.
He told us he was going to do this weeks ago. I mean, maybe if he hadn't
because we
said
knew
the
where
moment
the shenanigans were going to take place. The shenanigans take place, voting shenanigans take place in big cities. That's just the nature of American politics. It's always been that way. Big cities are where, big cities end up in big states that are valuable.
There's
for the
lots of big
electoral
cities in Ohio. I mean, I don't see him complaining about the result there.
He's not complaining about the result. What he's saying is, let's count the legally casted votes and let's see where we are. Ohio's not relevant to the Electoral College right now because it's already on one side. Let's give Joe Biden. New York's not relevant to the conversation because, New York's already been decided.
Understood that. But Joe Biden's accepting the results, and Joe Biden hasn't, at every step of the last few months, said, I'm not going to see if I respect the transfer of power. We'll see. He didn't try and cast doubt on mail-in ballots. He hasn't started saying, I'll call the lawyers in as soon as the polls close. This is a man who is desperately clinging on to power like a dying swan. Somebody should tell him it's not a great look.
He's got to make the decision what's best for him and how to go out if that's what ultimately happens. The votes need to take place. It's not like anybody's asking for anything difficult and challenging. Maybe in the UK the process is a little bit different where votes don't matter. We've seen that experience with Brexit. But in the US, somebody's vote matters and it should be counted. And that's all the president's saying is if you've legally casted your vote, you have a responsibility to have that vote counted. You can't say that's what took place in the primaries because a lot of votes got thrown out. But it's good that the president brought attention to the issue of absentee ballots because it's an important issue. But like I said, and like the campaign has said, every legally casted vote should be counted, and we'll see where we are after that.
It's good to hear you say that. Bryan Lanza, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.